Welcome to CCI Drive Time, the podcast for vended laundry distributors. I'm Steve with CCI, using your drive time to cover laundromat trends, payment systems, and practical topics you can use in the field. Today, I sat down with Steve Michalik with M&L Equipment in the Ohio area. They actually are part of HM Equipment as well. Steve and I have known each other for a number of years and is just a great example of doing distribution correctly. And, we got to talk about all kinds of things from technology to investors to leads to hiring to all kinds of things that, that everyday distributors deal with. And so excellent conversation. Look forward to sharing it with you. Without further ado, here's Steve Michalik. Steve, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Steve?
Terrific. We'll have to the Steves unite here today for this
Steve
episode.
M's.
Yeah,
Steve M's.
Yes, thank you. The Steve M's unite today. Yeah, can't get any more confusing. But I'm excited to have this chat today because there's a couple things about you that I want to know more about. We certainly have known each other over the years. We both have been distributors for a long time. You work with us on the manufacturing side, and you've used some of our CCI products. And although this isn't necessarily an advert for that, certainly I'll take any applause or that you may have for the product if we get to it. But my hope is to kind of understand your experiences running distribution out in your part of the world and kind of some of the uniquenesses. But before we dive into that, I've been researching you just on I guess stalking you on LinkedIn or recently. But how did you make the transition to laundry? I think you were in the insurance business for a while. So what gets you in the laundry business?
Well, so M&L was my family's company, and it was third generation. I avoided it for a long time, but I grew up around it for the most part.
Yeah.
But they reached a point, where I think they were looking to add another salesperson, and I liked my previous job, but I was kind of bored with it, and I decided to make the move. So
yeah. So M&L is because I know there's it's kind of, you guys have had a merger acquisition. I don't know, what do we call this with HM?
It was acquisition, yeah. So
acquisition. Okay.
Yeah. My dad was ready to retire, and I just didn't want to do everything. I'm more of a relationship guy, a sales guy. So it just seemed like a good time. And, I had met with Adam Heldman with HM previously. And, he casually mentioned, hey, if you guys are ever looking to sell, give me a call. And so, Adam and I started talking about it, and, just seemed like a great fit. He's, he's a good guy. Philosophically, we kind of, we're in the same place. And so we made it happen. We sold the company officially to him January 1st of last year. So
of last year. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's I actually, not to get off track a little bit, but I actually really like seeing that transaction in contrast to some of the other types of acquisitions that we're seeing. And I want to get into that a little bit down the road, but I'm glad to see two like-minded organizations find a way to kind of get stronger together and obviously meet some needs of the principles around that. So, congrats on finding that. But so, again, so it's been about 15 years, I think you've been in this business, if I'm doing the math right. Again, I've been stalking you online. So I think,
just over 15. Yes, sir.
15 years. And, you've played a sales role predominantly, but you're obviously in some leadership there too. So, I guess, and then again, I don't want to ignore the fact that you're also now a multi-store operator as well. So you've dipped your toe all the way in
all
to this.
The way in. Live and breathe laundry.
Yes, and that just makes it harder to get out. So any aspirations of you getting back out again is probably getting far too gone now. Yeah,
far too gone. Yeah, I mean,
far too gone.
I'm enjoying what I do. The laundromats were kind of a, you know, an opportunity maybe to, if I wanted to kind of step back and focus
Hmm.
on just that in the future, that's what basically what that's for.
The option is there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Despite what Adam wants, I don't want to work forever. So, um, so I mean, the laundromats are still work. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah,
as
of
far as
course. Yeah.
less work, yeah,
Yeah. Like I said, the flexibility around that is a little nicer when it compares to, some of these more demanding roles that we get involved in. So good,
absolutely.
good to see it. I'm
Yeah.
curious, 15 years is a good amount of time to see enough change. What kind of perspective change? And again, you say you were part of this as a family business that started and you kind of avoided. So you were kind of aware of a lot probably, coming up through that. What would you say how's your perspective change going from those early years to getting into more of more of an executive role, but you're still a sales guy, I think, at heart, right? What have you seen
Yeah.
change over that time? What would you say is noticeable?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of technological advancements in the industry.
Mm,
From a distribution standpoint, you kind of touched upon this, but the consolidation in this industry is, really ramped up over the last, 5 to I
yeah.
don't even know how long, 7, 8 years, something like that.
Hmm.
That's a huge change. It really changes, your perspective especially as when we were just M&L, we were, pretty small compared to, some of these larger companies that are buying
Hmm.
distribution, and it's kind of intimidating, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's been, a huge change. It's really had a huge effect on our industry, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Whether it's good or bad to be determined, but
Yeah.
that kind of helped lead us to, you know, selling the company, because
Yeah.
it's like, well, strength in numbers. We're part of a
Sure.
larger organization now, and
Hmm.
that just gives you a little bit more stability and a little less uncertainty.
Sure, sure. So both companies, HM, M&L, are both kind of in somewhat the same territory, but you have you carry the same lines of equipment. And I also know that which I want to get into a bit about, is that you guys you do quite a bit of OPL. It's not just vended laundry. I'm a kind of a vended guy, but you
Yeah.
guys do both. So tell me, how do you split the territory space, or do you have a geographic territory that you split, or do you share the territory?
Um, Excuse me. Well, historically, M&L kind of had the top half of Ohio, and we butted up against HM somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Some lines we shared, like the Columbus, Ohio market. But now, we're working kind of as one team. I'm VP
Okay.
of sales for both companies.
Yeah.
We've got a team of sales reps, and so like the Columbus market that we used to share, one of the people that were that was an HM salesperson handles the OPL there. And then, well, Chloe, with HM or
Hmm.
with M&L,
Yeah.
she's doing the vended side in the Columbus market. So
Okay.
so we're not treating it as separate territories per se. It's just, we've just got a list of all the counties, in all of our territory, and who covers that county at this point. So
Okay. And you cover all of Ohio essentially, and then what other how far outside of Ohio do you go? Do you go into? I know you're Cincinnati, so that sometimes means you end up in Kentucky. Hmm.
yes, yes. So we
Okay.
have we have the whole state of Ohio. We well, we've always done a little bit of stuff in Western Pennsylvania, but
Okay.
we did pick up, an alliance line in Western PA. And then
Okay.
as you go south, we have Northern Kentucky and Southern Indiana as well.
Oh,
We
okay.
also do OPL in parts of West Virginia, but we haven't sold any vended products in West Virginia.
Okay. Interesting. I'd like to know across those territories, and even state doesn't even matter if you leave the state, but do you see anything different or the same about selling in one market for that? Do you actually categorize them as different markets, or is it pretty much the same across the board? Whether, is doing business in one place harder than others? Is it the customers different? Are the investors different? What have you noticed in having kind of such a big territory?
Um, Realistically, the territories that we had previously, well, I mean, Western PA again, that's pretty new to us, so we're still
Mm-hmm.
getting into that market. We're being aggressive there, but it's kind of it's a little tricky because our name isn't out there as much on the vended
Okay.
side of things. So people aren't as familiar with our company.
Yeah.
And we also recently picked up, I mean, we had the northern Kentucky, southern Indiana counties that were close to Cincinnati before, but when another distributor sold to a company, they lost a certain line that we picked
Okay.
up, and so a lot of that is new to us as well. So like the
New
Louisville
opportunities
market,
there.
yeah.
Okay.
In fact, we just hired a sales rep about a month ago to handle that, the Louisville and northern Kentucky, southern Indiana.
Sure.
So
Sure.
he's still learning, but making
Yeah.
making progress.
Good. Yeah, I'm going to ask you about new salespeople in that in a moment. But so how? What's the balance of OPL to vended? For us in Chicago here, we're like almost all vended. I mean, an OPL deal has to really fall in our lap for us to do it. But I know that there's also a lot of companies out there that are the other way. It's like they're pretty
Yeah.
much just really good at the OPL, and then I find there's a fairly small group that do both actually, and they have
Yep.
it. But I'm curious what your balance is between those two.
So I can't. It's going to be hard for me to answer that,
Okay. All right.
accurately, particularly with the like the HM kind of territory. But
Yeah.
I would say HM had a very good balance of both. They have a very strong sales rep on the vended side, and some strong people that focus on OPL, and their service department, is their specific service department before we came together was
Hmm.
larger than ours, and I think
Yeah.
on the OPL side of things, service is what drives sales.
It's critical. Yeah.
It really is. So
Hmm.
we're working on that up here. We already had been working on that, but
Hmm.
M&L until about 10 years ago, we also were we were M&L supply company, and we sold supplies to dry cleaners, laundries, etc.
Hmm.
And that, man, that was a crazy business, and it
Was it?
took a lot of
Okay.
resources.
Okay.
A lot of people don't like to pay their bills on time and things like that.
A lot of
But
chasing. Okay. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. All
but
right.
so I think HM had kind of they were focused on equipment for a lot longer than we were.
Okay.
We've grown the equipment side tremendously at M&L since we sold
Hmm.
that division of our business, but
Hmm.
it takes some time, and we have some strong competitors with pretty solid service departments.
Hmm.
So it takes a while. So
Yeah.
that, long story short, I would say the M&L is probably a little stronger vended than OPL, but we're starting
Okay.
to see that balance out some.
Yeah. Good. Well, I appreciate that. And when you talk about hiring new salespeople, I'm curious. Um, when do you generally try to hire a salesperson to focus on one of those two areas, or do you want them to do both?
It kind of depends on where we're at geographically.
Okay.
It's hard, and I've done this myself. It's hard to juggle both.
Yeah.
Particularly with if you're in the middle of several laundromat projects. I mean, you don't have time to go knocking on doors, trying to get our name out there for OPL.
Hmm.
So I would say that the way that we're set up now, I mean, we pretty much have reps to handle different segments of the business. Now, our rep in Western Pennsylvania, he's kind of doing both, but he actually came from the industry from another company. So he
Hmm.
had some experience already. Part of it too is when when you're hiring somebody that's new to the industry. I mean, there's a lot to learn, and you don't want to overwhelm them so much.
Yeah.
So like the rep that we just hired in Louisville, he's pretty much going to be focused on vended sales for now. And as he becomes more comfortable with that, he might do a little bit of OPL. But you know we we have a very strong competitor there in the OPL market, and
Okay.
they're friends of ours as well. So
Okay.
that's not going to be our focus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And then that's where I'm going to go next with this is that so when you do hire somebody new, so and I think that's probably wise, particularly if they're not experienced in the industry yet, is you don't want to overwhelm them with
Absolutely.
both market segments at the same time. Maybe start with where you need the most, where you see the most opportunity in a market, and then give them the opportunity to get proficient before you throw them into another den of snakes. Yeah, that are part
Absolutely.
of that.
Absolutely.
What is your distributor? What does your salesman training consist of when you bring somebody in? Let's talk about fresh. Never
Phew.
been in the industry. Obviously, showed you something that made you feel like, he could probably do this. So, what does it look like? What does training look like?
I mean, really, it's spending time with either
Got it.
myself or some of our other more experienced sales reps.
Hmm.
His name's Nathan that just
Yeah.
recently started with us, but he's let's see, he spent his first week up in Northeast Ohio. He spent a day with me at my new laundromat. I thought that would be a good way
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
kind of just see all the aspects of a laundromat and
Sure.
get a good feel for what's involved. And then he spent a few days, in the field with Chloe, going, either cold calling or, going to visit customers of hers.
Hmm.
The next week, I went down there. We spent a few days just popping in laundromats in the Louisville
Hmm.
market. And then the last 2 weeks, he's been up here, a mix, he's splitting his time with Chloe and Sam, who's our Western Pennsylvania sales rep.
Gotcha.
I think next week we're gonna see how he does on his own.
Okay. So
I mean,
it's kind of an immersion technique. It's like just kind
yeah,
of watch and ask questions and go from there. Is there
exactly.
are there and I ask because I kind of know the answer is that there aren't really a lot of resources that we can lean
No,
on
there's not. No,
to get a new person kind of like introduced and kind of just start them on stuff. Part of the reason why I even started this was this realizing it's a small piece of it, but just giving them something to listen to while they drive around a little bit about other people's experiences. So I'm
absolutely.
curious what magic you had. How do you train somebody new?
I don't, man. I don't. I mean, that's what I did with Chloe. I figured, well, it worked
Yeah.
there, so,
Yeah.
so
But I think it takes the right personality then too.
it
Not that
does.
not that the individual may not be a good salesperson, but if they don't have the patience for the
Yes,
time that's going to take to kind of self learn by observation and just asking a lot of questions, I think there are some good people out there that would be good in front of customers and probably be really good at understanding product, but they may not have the patience to wait
right,
for them to get good at it. And I
right.
worry sometimes that just is going to, it discourages things. So I think it's a challenge for all small businesses. We're not exempt from it as coming up with good training tools, so that they have something to lean on, something they can work on when they're not sitting in front of you. Because you have a job to do too.
Right,
You've got
exactly,
things that you've got to
exactly.
work on as well. So new people can be a burden as well, but you have to do it. You got to
Well,
commit the time to it. Yeah.
absolutely. And
I see the same thing.
Alliance does have some online coursework, and so he
Yeah.
he has done some of
It's
that in
gone
his
through some
off
of
time.
that. Good. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
but
Have you found that those courses result in meaningful knowledge that they've taken aback? Have you found? I mean, I have to be fair. I haven't gone through any of them myself, so I don't know how well they are. But and again, we're not trying to beat on anybody. But do you find that your people are getting something out of it, or is it just eating up some time?
Uh, Um, I'll have to let you know because
Okay.
he's really the first one that I've had doing that.
Go through it. Okay.
Yeah, and part of that's because just like how far we are away from each other geographically. Like
Yeah.
when Chloe started, she was in the same, within 30 minutes of me,
Hmm.
versus 5+ hours down the highway. So
Right.
I just was trying to find something for him to do, like, well, the day I drove home from Louisville, or the day I was driving to Louisville.
Right.
So just something that can be valuable to him, but something to take up some time, I guess, as well. So
Sure. Sure. And I'm curious. Again, I'm curious about a lot of things, but how do you how do you differentiate? I think I tried to talk about, sales 101 is something that is everybody's saying, oh yeah, I know all of that, but then there's so few people that actually do some of these steps. I'm curious, how do you differentiate yourself? You talked about having some strong competitors in some of your areas that you support. What do you think helps you guys stand apart?
well, I mean, in my opinion, we have a premium product, which doesn't always work in our favor because we're not always going to be the winners based on cost.
Right.
We do what we can, but there's definitely some lower cost manufacturers coming into the market, and there
Sure.
always have been. But really, this kind of leads to when we were hiring Nathan. Some is our focus is our customers. We want to do what's best for the customer, even if that means not selling equipment or selling less equipment to them. We want to show them that we're committed to them, and that them being successful makes us successful. So
Yeah.
when we were interviewing people, we interviewed some solid candidates, but we got off our initial call with Nathan. I immediately called Adam and I was like, "This is our guy. He's going to fit in with our team. He's got that kind of laid back, customer focused mindset.
Yeah.
And that's really how I like to do business with people. It's a lot more fun if you can make friends with your customers." And so that's my
Mm,
focus. And, that's what I've preached to my team, like become friends with them, go grab a beer with them after work, or, even if you're with a customer, even during lunch if you have to.
yeah.
But, it's just, you become friends. It's more fun that way. And, it goes a long way with the customer, and it shows their commitment, or our commitment to them.
I'm so grateful to hear you say that because when you can talk to people who have been in sales a long time, and sometimes you can just, and I don't want to use this analogy the wrong way, but you can just hear the used car salesman in their voice every time they
Hmm.
talk about, or they try to, even if you're like pseudo role playing something with them just to kind of get a vibe for how they communicate.
Right.
And boy, that is such a turnoff to me, but maybe not to everybody. I don't know. It's not something that I feel is attractive, to an investor. And the relationship side of things seems so much more genuine. Like you said, let's just go grab a beer if after this meeting, and grab some dinner or whatever, and just form a relationship. I've said it before. Nurturing that kind of relationship is almost going to guarantee you a much better opportunity to excel that investor something else. You know what I mean? Not what not, but and
Absolutely.
and the key is what you said is like, don't sell him too much, because you
Right.
want to make sure he doesn't feel like you were used car salesing him into every option, every rust protection, everything that goes on there, because he doesn't know whether
Absolutely.
he's going to be there or care for that matter. And so building that relationship is, I mean, that is 101, isn't it though, still? But it
It
doesn't
is.
happen everywhere.
No, it doesn't. And that is, I mean, that is exactly what I don't want in somebody, that used car salesman,
Yeah.
type of
Yeah.
mindset and selling style. It's just, that's not who we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
There's other people out
Uh,
there that, if you want to deal with that.
yeah, and I just recorded an episode with Brian Wallace,
Hmm.
over at CLA, and one of the things he said that I thought was just really well taken, was this idea of the sales experience, the distributor sales experience to the investor, and whether or not that experience is commensurate with the investment that you're asking that person. Let's just talk about building a new store or retooling a store. I mean, this is a serious investment. I mean, this is no joke. And
Absolutely.
compare it to other large investments that consumers might make, like buying a luxury car, or making a big investment in like some type of stock investment that you're moving maybe some funds around to. And you think about how those people in the sales side of their treat you versus how are we treating our customers in that way. And I think where we add a lot of value is maintaining a relationship with them. I don't necessarily want to go and have dinner with the guy that sells me a new Cadillac, but
Right.
but nonetheless,
Right.
I think the guy that sold me $1 million laundromat, I probably should stay connected with.
Absolutely. No, 100%. No,
Yeah, so
and
I love that.
yeah, and quite frankly, I mean, if you help somebody be successful with their first store, there's a good chance there's going to be others to follow. And,
Yeah, yeah,
so it's a win-win for everybody. They're successful,
yeah,
we're successful.
for sure. And let's talk about how you finding opportunities. And again, we're in Chicago, and again, I don't know if this is the same. And and it's what's really unique about where you have the kind of this. You have some cities, of course, too, but in
Mhm.
Chicago, we really can't even find our way outside of the Chicago land area because the density is so full there. It's like there's just
Yeah.
too much to cover even in that, and there's a lot of people there. But I would imagine. In areas where you don't have a Chicago per se, with that kind
Right.
of density, that there's maybe some uniquenesses here in that, what are you doing to find opportunities? I mean, how are you finding leads? Are they coming to you? Are you having to go dig for the opportunities? Do you try to spec a location out short of signing a lease? What are you doing to draw business? Are you knocking on doors? It sounds like you are.
We are, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
for retools and stuff, I mean, obviously just, you know, visiting their laundromats, dropping off
Hmm.
information if there's nobody there.
Hmm.
If you get lucky, you stumble upon the owner, have a conversation with them, keep it very friendly, like we said. I
Yeah.
mean, that can go a long way. For new stores, I mean, we're lucky that Alliance does a great job with marketing, and they provide us with a lot of leads.
Oh, good.
Some quality ones, some not so quality, but they can't help that. Their
Sure.
marketing team's doing the best they can, and they're doing a great job, if you ask me.
Yeah.
So for new stores, I mean that's probably, I would say that as far as quantity of leads, that's where the most of them come from. Now, we
Come
do have
from.
people
So,
reach out to
mhm.
us, customer
Sure.
referrals. We again treat your customers well. You don't know. I mean, a lot of opportunities can come from that.
Yeah,
That's
whether it's
happened.
whether it's the store that you built for them, or they know somebody that would also like to be in this business and they had a good
Ex-
experience with you. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, that's
Yeah.
happened multiple times for us where, we've been connected with people that either wanted to get into the business or,
Hmm.
were thinking of buying one of an existing customer's stores. That's led to several multi-store owners,
Hmm.
becoming customers of ours.
Yeah.
And that goes a long way. I mean, word of mouth is huge, for any
Sure.
business, quite frankly.
Yeah. I've talked to a couple of folks from different parts of the country, and generally, when there's like a high population density or other kind of restrictions, I'm finding that that locations are very difficult to come by. There's locations always hard to find. A good location is obviously the needle in the haystack, and we all have to search for that. But in some markets, I'm coming to learn that you just literally cannot build a brand new store, and so that market ends up being a lot of retooling of existing stores, whether they change hands or not. That certainly may or may not happen. I'm curious, what are you running into? Are you running into a lot of retools? Are you running into new spaces that you're able to find? What's it been like?
I'd say a pretty good mix.
Mix.
Last year was a huge year for us for new stores.
Hmm.
Just everything, a lot of projects that we were working on just kind of fell into place at the same time.
Hmm.
This year, I would say, so far it's more retool than anything. But we do, we have some projects in the works with investors. I think mostly new investors too, not necessarily,
Hmm.
existing
Like first
store owners.
timers.
hmm
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the guys that we worked with last year, he took over a space. It was a laundromat that had just closed. He's looking for number two. So, we are looking at real estate, to build new stores for several people,
Hmm.
myself included. And
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Keeping your eyes open. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I have to be very careful. I
Sure.
don't want to compete with any of my customers, so
Of course.
I'm pretty limited on where I can go, so it could be a while.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, no, I
um,
understand. You want to find the right opportunity that is obviously good location, but also doesn't threaten anybody that you're trying to do right by at the same time, right? Yeah.
absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
you talked about an investor, a little bit. I wanted to ask you a little bit about kind of like what I'm going to call the investor profile, which is this idea of, you know, I would say that years ago I would think about a new investor as being your your very stereotypical entrepreneur wants to be in business for themselves, maybe had like a more salary based role, but made good money because you got to have some money to be in this business,
Right.
and is like, I want to take a shot in entrepreneurship. And when they look at all the things you could do, franchises, this and that, all these kind of small business opportunities, they land in laundry. And it's a lot of what we deal with, is that kind of new investor. But now we have these like private equity groups that are, money's no like object. Not that they're not card negotiators, but
Right.
they don't have any financing issues that come into,
Correct.
getting someone there. What are you seeing? Are you seeing a shift in the owner profile?
Um, I mean, we haven't really dealt with any private equity groups or anything like that
Okay.
as far as, getting
Hmm.
into laundromats. I'm sure that's to come. But
Hmm.
it's a mix. It really is. Some people are just trying to, you know, find a good solid investment. They're still working. I mean, we have people that,
Yeah.
have retired or, in at least a couple cases kind of retired early. And, they did good for themselves. They have some money, they want a source of income. It really depends, but I am seeing that, I mean, obviously the laundromat business has become very popular, particularly since COVID, I would say. A lot of people want their own business now. They're tired of working for big corporations and
Yeah.
stuff. But the investors are a lot more savvy now. They seem to have a lot more industry knowledge. They're doing their research a little bit more ahead of time. And I think that's mainly, A, due to social media, but B, there's just a lot more resources for them,
Yeah.
to learn about the business. So that would be the biggest shift that I'm seeing. It just seems that they're more informed now.
Yeah, no, that's a great observation, and of course that seems fairly natural. The internet, social media, the amount of content available for everything, whether it's good content or bad content, the content exists, which kind of just gets people. One, it probably draws more eyes to the industry, so you're
For
seeing people
sure.
do that. But then they can then find through those channels how to get information that maybe historically they only got through you, or from a distributor, but now you can look it up yourself. And I mean, with AI, you can almost
Oh,
you get advice about anything right at this point. So
absolutely.
who knows how that will continue to evolve? But I'm sure we will see that.
I'm
Let
sure.
you talked a little bit about doing the right. I think what I'll classify as doing the right thing when you're working with an investor, or even a retool when you're trying to put together like an equipment package for somebody. What's your process like? It's like, how do you decide what the equipment package is going to ultimately look like for a location? What are all the factors you're pulling in?
I mean, even if it's a retool and it's a laundromat that's been around for decades, same ownership. I mean, first thing we always do is look at the demographics.
Hmm.
See what's out there, see how much potential business, we think there is in, a radius that they can pull from. We look at average household size, kind of to help determine a mix. But I swear anymore, that none of that matters. You just put big washers in, and people go to them. I mean,
Yeah.
like my last store, the one that I just opened, and my smallest washer's a 30.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
I made that decision because there's two other laundromats in town. They have a lot of small washers. Those aren't the people that are going to bring you the most revenue. So I
Yeah.
decided they can keep those people. I want people that are going to come fill up my big
Yeah.
washers. It's better
Yeah.
for me. It's better for them because they can get in and out quicker, just using several big machines. And that's, as good as well as I do, that's how
Yeah.
things are trending. We got
Yeah.
they're getting bigger and bigger. We have Alliance has 120-pound washers available next month and 120
Yeah.
pound dryers. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought
Amazing.
my hundreds were big, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
we're retooling a store in our own. It's been 18 years, and we thought we had the biggest machines we could possibly fit in there, and now that we're 18 years later, we're like, oh, we could go bigger.
yeah, absolutely.
You know?
It's always going to go bigger, I think. I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, once you get past 120 pounds, though, is it really
I don't
practical for a
know. Yeah.
laundromat?
It stands over you, about 3 or 4 feet. It's kind of like, you end up with some other complications there, but no,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I mean, for years, I mean, it's always been kind of promoted or advertised about bigger, 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 and it's never stopped. I mean, and the machines do
No,
just keep getting bigger and bigger,
they
and
do.
so we're gonna run into real estate challenges. I mean, obviously, some of those machines you can't get through a normal door anyway, so
Oh
you're
no.
going through all of this rigging to try to figure out how to get the machine through the door, take the front storefront out, crane it in from top. All these
Absolutely.
complicated things. But I think I've never heard a story of someone to put in, let's say, a hundred plus pound machine, say, I wish I didn't put that machine in. Like
No.
I shouldn't have spent that money because it's an expensive machine. Every single one of them is like that's the machine I make the most money on. Now you can't put 30 of them in a store,
No.
but
No.
but that would be great. But
It would.
I've never had anybody turn away. Never say a negative thing about having a machine that was at least one really big machine, or obviously a row of big machines if you can make it happen. Yeah,
Yeah.
that trend continues. Yeah,
And
amazing.
and it's
Yeah,
interesting, like in my laundromat, seeing people come in because I tried to spend a good amount of time there. The first few weeks we were open, but
sure.
people would come in with 40 pounds of stuff and throw it in the hundred, and I tried to explain to them, you don't need this big a washer. They're like, oh, that's fine. It'll get cleaner this way. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So customer
Well,
perception is it's going to get cleaner in a bigger washer.
that
Like
that's
okay,
exactly what I was going to say. Is the perception has everything to do with this, not really the capacity. The only people that know what the true capacity of that machine is are you and I. The
right,
distributor and the store owner is the only one that really knows
right.
what the true capacity of a consumer. Just has these big plastic bags full of clothes, and they're like, yeah, that'll fit in there. you know?
Absolutely, absolutely.
We've even experienced and again, in the same store, we're in a process of retooling now that it's changing brands. So we're going from one brand to another brand. And the original brand was very clever in that their machine looks bigger than it actually is. And
Hmm.
I can't believe that's not a strategy being taken on by more manufacturers, because we're putting bigger machines in, and the customers are saying, "Oh, I wish you were putting in the big machines like you had before." Like, no, this is actually a
This is
bigger
bigger.
machine
Yeah,
than the one that we took out of here. But it's all about perception, right? So it's like, how
it
could you
is.
convince the mother that's got two kids dragging behind her with a couple bags of laundry that machine is actually bigger than the one that they've been using for years out of the store.
Right.
But yeah, that's our job, I guess, is to figure out a way to set that perception correctly.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well,
good. Uh, I'd like to talk about technology a little bit. Obviously, we're a tech company, and again, I'm going to lean on you because I know you're a customer of ours, not just a industry friend and a co-distributor. But you decided to open up a couple of stores in the last few years, and you decided to use CCI products. And I'm curious, what how did you come to the decisions that you did about whether you're going to be coin and card only? What was in your mind when you were making that decision for yourself? And I'm guessing you probably portray that to your investors too.
I do, yes. So for me, it was a convenience thing. My stores are card only. I
Hmm.
travel, I travel for work. I like to travel personally. I don't want to
Yeah.
be, you know, limited. We went to
Hmm.
Italy for 2 weeks in October. Nobody had to
Wow.
collect. One little tip. One little tip. Flex RF. You should have the 1,000 bill acceptors
Bill acceptors.
standard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Standard.
yeah,
Yes. Okay.
yes. But anyhow, I got to order one I got to order them for the
Okay.
other stores still.
And
But
if your biggest problem is your bill acceptors are filling up too fast, I guess
that's not the
we're
worst
doing
thing in the
okay.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always a second kiosk.
That's right. That's right.
The one I mount lower for ADA purposes
Yeah,
that never
right.
gets filled. So, um, but uh, but so coin
So
just wasn't an option for me.
yeah.
When we bought our first store, I operated it for a couple months using coin.
You
Went away
did.
for a week. I already had to have Chloe actually help me and collect it for me.
Mm,
So it's inconvenient, and I
yeah.
just don't have the time to go in several times a week to collect coins. You have obviously you could have other people do it, but then there's the
Mhm.
the trust factor. It just can make
Sure.
relationships weird.
Yeah.
So I opted to go card only. I also think it's safer as a laundromat owner.
Hmm.
Your kiosks can be open from the front or rear, but I
Right.
always collect from the rear behind a closed door or at least a cracked door so people don't see me handling cash.
Right.
And when there's not coin boxes on a washer, customers are, why would they vandalize that washer other than just to
Right.
be a jerk? So,
Yeah.
it seems like there's a lot less, riffraff that goes along with it if you're a card only store.
Hmm.
So, I made that decision, and quite frankly, I, I've only really ever sold CCI, personally when I was in a sales role.
Hmm.
You guys have always been very, very good to me, and I feel like me and you and your brother, we've all
Hmm.
traveled together on some
Yeah.
industry trips and have become
Yeah.
friends. So,
Right.
when I heard about the Flex RF system, I was intrigued and went over that with Paul a bit and decided to go that route because I knew we've had good luck with your fast card and laundry card systems for some of
Hmm.
my customers, and I had a good feeling about it. So
Oh, good. Well, yeah. Thank you for saying that. And it's that's you're like a walking sales pitch for us here. And so those are all the reasons why people do this. So you're doing it for all the right reasons. I'm curious when you're communicating with your investors, are you? And this is probably something you might remember from maybe 15 years ago to now. Is what was the conversation like then versus what it is now about the technology they're going to go in? Are you struggling to get people to adopt some kind of payment technology outside of coin?
no, actually,
No.
I think everybody. Yeah, there's always going to be
Yeah.
some, but
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty much everybody understands. This world is getting more and more cashless.
Hmm.
So you have to have the ability to accept payment in a different way. And you can see it in the industry too. There's so many different options out there now for electronic
Yeah.
payment. So I would
Hmm.
say, the majority of our customers now go into it wanting to have the ability to accept payment electronically. But, some still like to take coin as well. And, that's
Hmm.
fine. There's options for that. Obviously you have options for that.
Hmm.
Unfortunately for you, I guess a lot of the manufacturers have options for that now. But
Yep. Yep.
and that does help a little bit when it's a
Sure.
hybrid store because it can keep the cost down a little bit. But
Sure.
I recently dealt with a customer personally, and it's a couple actually, but one I met him actually at Washer I Fold in Nashville, and
Oh,
he was looking to add a couple washers, and so I ended up handling it myself just because we kind of built a relationship, and Chloe happened to be on vacation when
hmm,
it was kind of a crunch time thing because there were rebates expiring. So,
okay.
we got to talking, and he had card readers on a few of his pieces of equipment, but I was telling him how great it was not having to collect quarters, and
Hmm.
ended up with him going coinless.
Mm,
So it owning stores, having technology like that in your own store, and being able to speak from an owner's perspective really helps to sell that, in my opinion. But I think most people
yeah.
understand that where this world's going. So
Yeah, I think you're right. And to kind of piggyback on another interview I'd done a few weeks back, who also is a multi-store owner and a distributor, he when we talk about what is the advice you give like a new distributor, to that's getting into this business, and I may ask you the same thing, so be prepared. Is he's like buy a store or build a
right,
store, and like not everybody can afford to do that, but it is
right,
really good advice because you get to not only witness the trials and the challenges that come along with store ownership, but all the positive things that come along with it, and you get to make some of the same decisions that you're asking your investors to make, and you can provide guidance based on your experience so far. So I'm a fan of distributors owning locations. You're right. There's a fine line that you got to kind of walk on that to make sure that you're not interfering with your investors. And I think we're all wise enough to do that in a responsible manner. But yeah, it's I think it's probably made it easier for you to make certain statements and make certain claims and to um, prove that something works when you can just say, "Here it is, look,"
yeah,
and I can,
absolutely.
and if you and depending on how open you are, you can share anything that you're willing to share.
And I do, and and it's
Yeah,
great to have like a nice showcase store to show to these
show
people
place.
too.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean that
Yeah,
with our territory being so large, I mean obviously that's
yeah. It's hard
not
for
the
everybody to
case
get there,
for,
but
yeah, exactly, but
yeah,
I'm doing what
yeah.
I can.
Sure, of course,
Yeah.
of course. So as we kind of get, kind of towards the end of our time, I want to talk a little bit about, kind of where you see things going. Do you have a crystal ball that where you can kind of tell me, like, where's this industry going in 5 years and 10 years? What kind of changes do you see coming?
Um, well, I mean, I can say that, I mean, the industry is not going anywhere because people are always going to
Yeah,
have to do laundry. But
right.
I think, which, like you mentioned earlier, there is going to be more private equity.
Mm,
I see, I mean, they're already, you know, buying portfolios of stores from people, et
right.
cetera. But I think the demand is still going to be there. I think the popularity of the industry is going to stick around because
Hmm.
it is a great industry. It's
Hmm.
a,
Hmm.
we'll call it semi-passive if you want it to be,
Yeah,
way to operate a couple businesses and, not have to put too much time into it depending on how you operate them.
right.
My stores are unattended stores. They're not big, so I don't, have room really for drop off and things like that. But obviously, if you're, looking to go,
Do more. Yeah,
yeah, do more. I mean, there's the ability to make more money in it too. And maybe I will do that at some point. When I
sure.
get to number three. But it's hard to say what's going to happen. I mean, I think we're going to see more consolidation probably on the distribution side. It's
Hmm.
tough for the little guys right now.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but as far as
Yeah,
investors and stuff, they're still going to be around.
that's good. And you started to touch on distribution too from there. Are you optimistic about the future of distribution as it relates to this kind of evolving world? Because we're obviously seeing a lot of consolidation there. Manufacturers are, they're either buying up distribution or maybe they've already kind of got spun something up in markets here. How are you feeling about some of that kind of change in competition?
Um, now that I'm part of a bigger organization, I feel better
Yeah.
about it. I mean, it's a little scary when you have half a state and
Yeah.
that's your whole territory, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think, I've heard people, express fears of, distribution just being wiped out, manufacturers going direct. But
Mm,
you can't, I mean, how are they going to service these customers? How are they going to build
yeah.
these relationships? I mean, I just don't see it happening. I think the manufacturers recognize that, in the OPL world, particularly industrial world, there were some manufacturers that historically had sold through distribution, and they just wiped out their distribution network and went direct.
Mm,
But that's a little bit easier because you're selling to these large industrial plants that have their own service teams, and they can handle anything that's thrown at them.
yeah.
When you're dealing with like smaller OPLs, like a hotel, motel, nursing home, laundromats. I mean,
They don't have
a lot
anybody
of
there. Yeah.
no,
Hmm.
exactly. I mean, a lot of laundromat owners can work on their own equipment, and I commend them. And I'll dabble a little bit, but I try not to get too deep into things personally. But we need those people on the ground to service our equipment. The smaller guys do. So I
Yeah.
think the future for distribution is solid.
I agree. And, e- even if you were to eliminate the distribution company from from the process of someone opening a business, doesn't take away, I think is what you're saying, the responsibilities of whatever that company was doing there. And so,
Right.
having the manufacturer be able to execute on all of that from a distance, particularly with the micro nature of that business, not having resources like an industrial laundry does. They've got tons of maintenance people, and that's what they are. They're all about maintenance.
Yeah.
I think I agree with you, and I'm glad you echo this. That distribution has got a lot of legs, and it's still, that layer needs to be there. If manufacturers are taking on that, they're not eliminated. They're just also doing those layers as well, which should hopefully mean that the margins associated will stay strong as well, because it costs money to do that piece of the puzzle. That's not
I,
something that comes at no cost. Yeah. Yeah.
no, absolutely,
Great.
absolutely.
Well, I think that's a great place to close it up, Steve. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate you sharing some of your experiences, and I think what I'm hopeful for is, if for anything, new people that are looking for more resources to learn about kind of how distribution runs, how to do it right. I think you're a good example of that, and
Thank you.
just some of the things that we've seen out there. This has been perfect. So thank you very much for doing this, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again. I know you guys are having an event in the fall, and I will be there, but look forward to seeing you then for sure.
Appreciate Absolutely. Me too, Steve. And I
All right.
appreciate you having me on.